Hey, Rental Roundtable listeners, for episode number 53, we had on Mike Murphy. He's the president of Ally Fuels based in California. Really interesting episode. And one of the big takeaways was how fuel can be a huge revenue driver for independent rental companies. Not only that, it can be a way to differentiate from the nationals and some of your competitors to offer on-demand fuel services on job sites and ultimately deliver a better customer experience. We talked about the sort of three evolutions of fueling, right? 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and where we're moving towards is using software and technology to deliver a better customer experience using fuel as a way to do that. Mike's got 20 years experience in the fuel industry, working with equipment rental companies, 8 years experience building his company now. Really interesting episode. I've never really thought about fuel before, but I'm actually starting to believe that this could be a huge value driver, a huge revenue driver for independent rental companies in the next few years. So hope you guys enjoy. All right, everyone, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 53. We've got Mike Murphy on, the president of Ally Fuels. Mike, welcome to the show.
Awesome, Kyle. Thank you so much. And I do want to, briefly say thank you for what you're doing. I think it's absolutely huge for this market. Listening to the voices, I've been tracking you for over a year. And really appreciate all the information I'm getting. I mean, I'm getting stuff out of this, even as a 20-year fuel vendor. It's amazing what you guys are doing here on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's amazing with technology. You just need a microphone and a computer.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And like we have awesome people in this industry. That's sort of the theme of
Yeah.
these episodes. People talk about why rental. Well, they usually trip into it, but like, why do you stay? It's the people, the relationships. Yeah, we started doing these weekly this year, and it's been awesome. Just like all the people we've gotten to know, and there's so many great stories to tell, including yours, right? So today we're going to talk about fuel, how that could be a huge revenue driver for rental companies I've never even thought about before. So I'm excited to jump in here. And, I got to also acknowledge the Dodgers hat behind you. Congratulations. Great season last year. Looks like another good season this year.
Diehard, born and raised Dodger fan. And it's a special time, I would say. I mean, a lot of my friends, I have a lot of Bay Area friends. They're not too happy about it, but the blue is pretty powerful. It's pretty exciting to watch.
Did you get to go to any playoff games last year?
I didn't go any last year, but the years prior, the heartaches and stuff, and my birthday's in August, so I try and make it a pilgrimage every year in August that I go to a game. In fact, a good friend of mine, his dad was the original architect to Dodger Stadium, so I usually go to a few games with him. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of great baseball teams and legacy out there, but Dodgers I just love it. It's awesome to go.
Yeah, with Ohtani, I mean, just such a fun team. I'm not a huge baseball fan, not a Braves fan, although I live in Atlanta, and I know everyone's here a little depressed. I started the season 0-7, and it was sort of off kilter. But anyways, it keeps it fun. Mike, I always like to start these episodes off with people's background and story, and really how you got into rental, and obviously you're running Ally Fuels. We're gonna talk a lot about that today. But tell me about your journey, how we got here today.
It's been a long one, right? I've done a lot of things in my life, and I'm going to age myself, but back in the day, I worked in construction as a younger person in high school and in college, and after college, I was in the labor union, and then in the operators union as well. But worked in Hollywood, but that could be a whole different podcast segment on that. But when I started figuring out what I really want to do for a living back in the day, Craigslist was actually the LinkedIn of the day. So a lot of my friends, Murph, everyone calls me Murph. Murph, you can sell anything. You just got to find something you want to sell. And I literally went on Craigslist, and I'm born and raised here in LA, and I was looking for a change to kind of get out of the hometown. And I saw a ad for a small oil company looking for their first salesman with no experience necessary. And holy smokes, that's right up my alley. It's in the Bay Area, so I get out of LA. I called a friend of mine who lives in the Bay Area. I go, hey, I'm going to come up for at least a good time this weekend, and I got an interview. And he started pressing a little bit. What are you coming up here for? What kind of job? And it just by chance and fate, what have you. It was his brother-in-law that owned the company. And it was pretty amazing, where we just called him and we all got together that weekend. And of course I got the job, and that kind of started my journey in the fuel industry. And I worked, and I know how you love to talk about niches. So I worked for him for about a year, and I got it immediately. And what was cool is the niche of construction refueling and equipment rental guys. That was our niche, and it still is today, where I focus, it's not a small niche. It's actually a very large niche in terms of the country, and it's getting bigger. We call it wet hosing, right? Where you're actually filling the equipment directly. And especially here in California, it's a really big deal. And that's where I really honed in my skills as a salesman. And after a year, I decided to go on my own venture, not having anyone in the oil business at all, but I made relationships, and I was able to secure buying fuel at a good price, and where to park my trucks. And so I started the journey there in the fuel business. And like I said, the niche was contractors, the projects, and equipment rental. The equipment rental was a very big piece and still is to this day. And in fact, it's become probably my biggest focus. And, we could talk about the software I developed, but the beginnings were that. And that was exciting. And, it's evolved. I think there's, I like to call it, we in software or startups, you talk about having pivots, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this industry is in a very large pivot. I think the next 3 to 5
Mm-hmm.
years in equipment rental is going to be unbelievably fast.
Mm-hmm.
Software, everyone, their ears perk up when they hear AI and, all this legacy software that is kind of old and clunky. And I think people, the big five and smaller, everyone's looking for advantages and also opportunity in software. And that's where I had an idea 10, 15 years ago and started implementing it. But the real the real change for me was the pivot in terms of the relationship with equipment rental companies. Um, I call it the three evolutions. And anywhere in the country, you're either in the first evolution, the second, or the third. Now, the first that started for me was, back in the day, everyone would come to a front desk to rent equipment. And
Mm-hmm.
the big push for a salesman, to own a company or be a salesman in the oil industry, your goal was to get your name, your card on at the front desk, because every time someone rents a backhoe, a generator, a cat excavator, they're like, hey, how do I fill this? Do you know anybody local that can fill this for me? And if your card was up there, you're going to get the call. And, rental companies, fuel is very, there's a lot to it. Taxes, excise taxes, it's very complicated. So the first evolution, of course, is, hey, call this guy, Mike. Murph will take care of you. He's going to bill you direct. They don't want to deal with it. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
still a big part of the country where, there's rental companies, big and large, that have relationships with oil companies, but they just don't want to deal with the fuel. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a hassle. And, on your podcast, I see all the time, it's about efficiency and time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first evolution. And, that was exciting to get your card at the front desk and getting those relationships built with the front desk and the salespeople, the branch managers. The second evolution was, it was, I noticed that, wow, this is really nice to work with the rental companies. There's a little bit more safety in terms of getting paid. If you
Mm-hmm.
have a relationship, they're not going to go anywhere, and there's a great relationship where when I was on a job site and before a job trailer would land, I would tell a sales guy, hey, this job is going to go off. Here's the superintendent's number. And that's what they want to go. That's when it's really hot for them. So there was a working relationship where we're helping each other. But the second evolution, and I pitched this to a mid-sized rental company in Northern California. They were doing a ton of work for home builders, and they were setting up generators all over the place. They'd have like 20 or 30 locations. This is, before the big crash in '08. I mean, home building was just going crazy. And they had a lot of generators out there. And I pitched to the owner of this mid-sized company. I said, what if I did all your fueling for you? I bill you and you bill the end customer. And he loved that idea. And that was the second evolution. And I think for California, that's starting to really, the last 15 years, a lot of rental houses are now picking up on that. And they're using this evolution where we will bill them and they bill the end customer. They have a captive audience. And, the whole market, whether it's fuel or equipment rental, it's changing. Customers are demanding more. They want
Mm-hmm.
more transparency. They want ease of, hey, I need reports. How much fuel did I burn on that job, this job? And, my industry, we sell diesel fuel, dinosaur blood or whatever you want to call it. In a lot of ways, our software and the way we work, I like to I like to say, it's kind of, I love history, and it's kind of like the Greek states, right? Every city states its own entity. And man, my grandfather started this company, and, we do it this way. And everyone's got ideas and software, it's starting to come up in our industry, but there wasn't any way to modernize or help the rental companies track the fuel. So the second evolution was that piece. I got that win, and I literally remember to this day the fax machine going off. Yes, I'm older. The fax machine just ripped through like 20 projects to start the next day. And every night I would fax over the asset number, the gallons, and the hour readings on the generator. Because for billing, you gotta track hour readings. That's part of the piece in terms of billing. So that's where the second evolution started. And like I said, a lot of parts of the country are still in that phase where they now see the value in having fuel as a revenue stream. But there was nothing that made it super easy to track and manage jobs. And so that was where I started Nomad, the fuel management software that Ally Fuels uses. I had an idea about 10, 15 years ago where I was on a job site doing a delivery. I had to do a route one day, and I showed up to the job trailer to drop off the ticket, right? A receipt. And I walked in the job trailer, and I was shocked because, back in the day, there used to be big clunky computers at every job trailer. And that wasn't there. There was nothing at the job trailer. And I walked out and talked to the superintendent. He's like, "Oh, I do everything on my phone," And I said, "Wow, why?" And I'm getting calls and emails all day long, text messages and spreadsheets, right? We're still living in the spreadsheet world. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And I started thinking about it more and more. And, I don't have any software computer background. So I kind of I went down a rabbit hole of trying to find people that can build an MVP. I didn't even know what an MVP is. I heard about it,
MVP is Otani, right?
That's right. There you go. I said, there's got to be a better way. And I started asking my friends in the rental world, what would make your life easy? And, it still is spreadsheets. Everyone lives in spreadsheets. And I want to pull my hair out because I hate looking at spreadsheets, and there's some masters at using them and how you manipulate them, but goodness gracious, it's time to move on. Right. And, so I asked some of my really good friends in the rental industry, what would make your life easier? And from that, we kind of duplicated their pain points, and we built a beautiful dashboard for my MVP. And I had a nice presentation at a rental house at the branch, and their jaws dropped, and they said, "This is live right now." And I showed them how I can add a job in, under a minute by just keying in job information. And they were blown away. And that was 8 to 10 years ago now. We went from MVP to back in 2016. I mean, it's tragic, about the fires here in LA. But in 2016, there was a big fire, Woolsey Fire in Malibu. And we used Nomad. That was like, we just got the MVP running. It was probably running for about 6 months. And immediately this horrible, tragic fire hit. And we were tracking over 100 generators. And it was the first time ever that this rental company was able to close out all the jobs within a week or so. Usually with the spreadsheets and waiting for invoices, it would typically take months to try and decipher that. And so that was a real big win for us. And I think it got the attention of larger, managers, regional managers, and said, what are you guys doing down here in LA? And that's really where it took off.
So just to restate those three evolutions, the first one is business card, driving around, old school, no technology, right?
No technology.
Phase two is more of a deeper relationship, or billing the rental company, they bill the customer, and there's better processes, but still spreadsheets.
Yes.
Move the spreadsheets. And the third one, you're talking about using software technology to start to streamline, automate.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And, there's a lot of, I've been doing it for 8 years now. And, the first couple of years I was super excited. I went up and down the state talking to all my fuel vendor, we call ourselves jobbers, right? So I was talking to jobbers up and down the state. You guys got to get on this thing. It's amazing. We can build a network. And once again, it's the Greek city states, right? Sparta and Athens don't like each other, or not even that. It's just, hey, we do it our way. But I think the shift for the evolution that I'm talking about, the third evolution, it's happening now. I think
Mm-hmm.
the big five are 100% looking at it. That's a fact. But also, the smaller guys, the guys with one branch or five, regional, I see a huge value because, believe me, Kyle, I watch all your podcasts. Everything is about how do you make your life more efficient, and we have an 8-year use case now. So the good thing is, I love to talk. I love to sell. I think I'm pretty good at it, but I tell people all the time that I don't have to sell this much. I can have people tell you how much it works. I got 8 years of experience doing it.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact we're saving 30 to 40% of time, in terms of managing fuel, instead of waiting for your Outlook to send emails and building your own spreadsheets and files. It's all in one place, and it works. It makes their life easy. It's easy to track. And I think, the third evolution, like we talked about, I think there's going to be more integration. I think integration is going to be the future, API connections. We built this to have that capability. And we also see telematics as a huge, huge part of it.
So, but on the integration part, we did a state of rental report. We interviewed over 50 rental companies. We're going to do this annually. What we found was only
cool.
16% of rental companies have a fully integrated technology stack, right? That's terrible, right? It should be 95%, not
that's right.
16%. But okay, I think if we interview this group next year and the following year and the following year, I think it's going to increase.
Absolutely.
And part of the evolution on 3.0, I'm curious though, how much like predictive analytics, like how much are you seeing around corners? Because at some point you get all this data. I imagine you could start to say, hey, I think this customer is going to need fuel, or you can pull data off telematics, which would be a big step forward from 1.0 and 2.0. Are you guys able to do that today?
Well, right now we're just, it's a slow process, right? But telematics, I think, is going to really rule the day, and we're super excited about that. Now, there's also, I've got 20 years of experience. I've pumped millions of gallons through my own hands, and there's certain things you don't want to lose control over. And these new generators, these tier 4 or above, they take DEF fluid. Guess what? The fuel might not be low, but your DEF might be low. So that might even change your delivery schedules. So there's a lot of experience there. And so right now we've got a manual piece to scheduling, where we can automate, but it'll kick out orders for you. But the telematics piece, I really think it could be, I think it's going to drive it. I think it'll be able to ping you like, hey, we're running low. But I also think there's going to be some interesting, hiccups with that because, at 2 a.m, if it calls you, if it pings you, that's not ideal for a fuel delivery guy. I don't want to get a call at 2, although I will go,
right.
But I think the data and also just the history of that generator, I've talked to other software companies that, the life cycle, and I think you've had a few of them on your podcast where, data is important, and if you, and some of these generators, the newer ones especially are really quirky. And I think that we've got a lot of interesting enhancements. I don't really want to talk about them just yet, but I think there's a lot of features in terms of the history of that generator, the usage, any quirks you have, different manufacturers run differently. Some tend to burn a lot more DEF or a lot more fuel depending on their loads. So we see that as an absolute huge thing just because we're already building reports, right? So when a job's over, you click on a report and you've got it. Again, currently on Evolution 1 or 2, you're dealing with spreadsheets. You're asking the fuel company for a spreadsheet. We can provide all that.
Yeah, when you're talking about 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, I'm thinking about, I actually just read this book in March, Outlive by Peter Attia. He's a doctor.
Okay.
But he talks about 3 evolutions in medicine, and there's some similarities.
Oh, really?
So 1.0 is going up till 1850, and it's like the idea that like we didn't even know what bacteria was, right? And so like you had all the stories of like all of a sudden in Europe, all these mothers were dying after giving birth. Well, they realized the doctors were working in the morgue in the morning, bringing the bacteria to the mom. So we realized that, right? So we are way beyond that, right? But now we're in 2.0, which is typically like you have the 4 horsemen that diseases, right? Cancer and Alzheimer's and heart disease and diabetes. but typically what happens in at least the United States is you're treating cancer once you have cancer, and you're treating heart disease
Right.
once you have the heart attack, and it's usually too late sort of thing, but you're treating a
That's right.
very acute thing. So what this doctor is proposing is medicine 3.0, which is getting ahead of these things and being more
That's
predictive.
right.
So for example, there are markers that are pretty strongly correlated with heart disease, and there's things you can do
Mhm.
today to lower the risk of heart disease in the future. It's much better to prevent a problem than to deal with it later. Same with all these things. Like there's certain things you can do. Exercise is the miracle drug, getting sleep, all these
Yep.
things, right? So I was thinking about how does that apply to rental, right? And you have 1.0, 2.0. 2.0 is, well, 1.0 is like paper and pen, nothing,
Yeah.
right? Business cards.
Right.
We're beyond that, although there are still a lot of rental companies who
Yeah.
operate like that. 2.0 is you have some analog system. It's a server-based program, and it's
Right.
manual Excel. You have an owner pouring over spreadsheets using
Yeah.
analytics and going, I think I should buy this one. I think I should sell this one. And
That's
it's
right.
actually fine. It's gotten us to this point, but you kind of think about 3.0, right? What does that world look like where you're getting ahead of problems, right? And I think
Yep.
this is like the part that is just starting and is going to continue for
Yep.
the next 20 years. It's
100%.
connected programs
Yes.
with fuel and telematics,
Yes.
accounting. It's using AI to start saying, hey, I think you should sell these 3 pieces of equipment. It's taking the
Yes.
load off of the owner's brain.
Yep.
That's the future where like the system starts to do the work for you,
Yeah.
and start to solve problems that are going to be problems in 2 years that you didn't even know about, right? So it's
100%.
interesting when you're talking about these evolutions. I'm like, I just read a
Yeah.
book about this in medicine,
Yeah.
and it's like sort of
That's cool.
that's happening across and that's part of like the
Yeah.
interconnected world. Like I think we're all sort of moving towards these leaps
Ab-
together, I'd say.
Absolutely. I typically am not a patient person. I wanna win. I wanna go. And for 8 years, it's been a head down focus the entire time. There's so much to unravel and enhancements. Like I said, I think we've solved about 80-90% of all their pain points today. Like that's
Hmm.
how well the software works now. But like you said, the integration piece and telematics and, we're already using AI to read invoices. And, it works so well that these branches, they're not even thinking about it anymore. It's just
Yeah.
the invoices pop into the system. And, we have to meet other fuel jobbers where they're at, with their software. And that's starting to come up, but the traditional softwares are super expensive. They take a
Yeah.
long time to get running. And I think that's what's so powerful about what we built. There's really not much training involved. I can all do it remote or just send them an email. Like I said, I mean, the younger generation get it really quick. And it's not rocket science, right? But we've made it to where, our big pitch is give us a minute, we'll handle the rest.
Hmm.
And that's pretty powerful. They can add a job in less than a minute, but we see integration is really could be key to that. That could actually make it go
Hmm.
faster. Where
Hmm.
when you're keying in or whatever software you have, a new customer rents something, you can kick off a default. Would you like us to handle fuel for you?
Yeah.
And we see that as a huge, huge opportunity. I think, as you said, that might take 3 to 5 years. That's going to take a little while, but there's a lot of software out there to integrate on, and I think that's where we're kind of, I bootstrapped this thing the entire time as well. And as a founder, that's not easy to do. And
Yeah.
now we're looking, do we want a couple strategic investors and partners in this? I think that can be a plus in terms of scaling, because I think the market, not even for equipment rental, but just the entire market and construction for fueling large projects, everyone's trying to figure it out, and everyone's trying to find a solution where they can have jobs anywhere in the country. And how am I going to look real time at the fuel? Because believe me, you can order a hamburger and French fries and a milkshake and track it the whole way, but you can't if you buy 20,000 gallons of fuel. It's just not
Right.
happening right now. So there's a long way to go for us on the fuel side, but I think the equipment rental guys right now today, I can only tell you that the big five 100% are looking at this. They're like, they want to solve it, because I don't see any other way to make, another revenue stream that's as easy as fuel, just by using the software we built.
Yeah. Well, so how do rental companies start to think about that, right? So I think we start off saying that it's one of the easiest ways to increase profitability, add a new
Right.
revenue stream. I'm a 2 location group in California where you
Yeah.
guys operate. Like, what
Easy.
is Ally Fuels? I've never heard of Ally Fuels
Yeah.
before. What do you guys offer? Number one, and number two, how do I think about monetizing fuel? I've never done that before.
Okay, so Ally Fuels is a nationwide firm, management firm. We call it pushing paper back in the day, where we would broker customers that have a job, let's say out of my area. I have fuel trucks here locally in LA, but and I went to these. There's very large traditional brokers in the world, and mid-size that are really good. And I went to all of them saying, hey, I'd like to license my software, and let's work together. Once again, it's kind of the Greek city states. People are, doing their own thing. So
Mhm.
we started Ally Fuels about 2, maybe 3 years ago now, just to kind of validate and prove out the theory that we had, that this is a big need, and we can get fuel to you anywhere, just like anybody. But we have this layer of technology that's going to make your life a lot easier that no one is going to be able to provide. So that's where it started. So yeah, if you're a small couple branches in California, I mean, like I said, it's pretty much just an introductory, like what it does. I mean, it's as easy as I can send you a login email and get you a login, set up your branch, give me the users that you want to have access. And then in 30 minutes, you can play with it. You can understand how to add it, add a job, how to track it. And, you key in a job with your phone or your desktop. That'll send our team an alert that a new job has arrived. And then we go to work. We just find a local supplier or us to handle the work. And then we handle all the billing, the taxes that you don't have to worry about, which gets very complicated. Every state's different. So you need to make sure you're in compliance with that. And then we just upload those invoices into the system. And then from that, we're learning a lot. Every rental company is a little different, right? Their PO process, some like a full some will open a PO for the entire life cycle of that project. Some want individual POs for individual orders. So everyone's a little different. We're learning a ton on that. And in fact, that's what's most exciting to me is, get to these mid-size or smaller rental companies that they don't have such, intricate POs, standards and things. We can figure out a solution with them. It's called Ally for a reason. We want to be your ally. I can show you, hey, this works. And, there's a lot of profit there. I mean, these rental companies are making a really good profit on fuel because customers are demanding, they don't want to have to open up credit apps to 100 different fuel vendors, and they see the rental company as, hey, I'm renting it already. Let's just go with you. And I think that's the value. And I think if you're a small rental company in California with 1 or 2 branches and you got a backhoe, a skid steer, I mean, honestly, we can find people that'll deliver 20 gallons,
Are most of your jobs, or are they usually for equipment that's on rent on a job site? Is that
Yes.
typically what happens? So like
Yeah.
say I'm a rental company, I get a call,
Yeah.
customers slammed, they're behind schedule. Hey, I need fuel.
That's right.
Typically a small rental company would have to go source that themselves. They don't have the
That's right.
resources, et cetera. But they with Ally, I log
Yeah.
into the Ally portal, I upload my information. You guys go ahead and deliver the fuel, and then you send that invoice back to the rental company, and the rental company
Correct.
can say, hey, we're going to add a whatever 20% surcharge on top of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the customer's like, great. He doesn't, the relationship that we're building together is a long-term relationship. That contractor may come and go in your area, in your territory.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and poach them. I don't need them as a client. I want to build a relationship with the rental company because rental is growing. It's not, it's getting bigger, not smaller. These contractors don't want to buy their own property or equipment. And, it's just want to put on the screen. I mean, it's as simple as 4 buttons, right? You can add a job, cancel a job. You can review stuff. It's, I made it to where if you're wearing gloves, you can still play with your mobile,
Yeah.
But we see the value. Like I said, we've got 8 years of use cases on this, and we know it. It's funny. Like yesterday, one of the big 5, a salesperson I've known for maybe 5 or 10 years, and real good guy, and he's really growing the fuel side of it. And he called me yesterday. He's like, you know what? I remember a few years ago, and you told me about Nomad and all this stuff. And I'm like, this guy, I don't know what he's talking about. He just kind of blew it off. And yesterday, he just felt compelled to call me saying, this is unbelievable. You gotta, who else is using this? Even his competitors, he's like, this makes life so much easier. Number one, as a salesperson, I'm giving my customer another service, and I'm making, and so I'm strengthening my relationship, but also we're making money on it. And
Mm.
I look at the efficiencies and all the things that the rental companies struggle with and how to make more money. I just, believe me, I went on Chat GPT and Grok and say, tell me a better
Yeah.
solution for profitability. And it doesn't matter how big or small you are in terms of a rental company, just tell me something that's better than fuel. I don't think
Yeah.
it's out there.
I mean, let me just like make some statements about the independent rental companies, right? Like
Yeah.
one, they would like to make more money.
Yeah.
Two, they have more than they can handle right now. They
Mm-hmm.
understaffed, craziness, flying
Yep.
around, thousand things. They don't really have time to take on a new line
That's right.
of business. And number three, how do you compete with the nationals, right? And the answer is usually on customer service and experience,
Yeah.
right? So
That's it.
to take the money side out of it, even if they're not marking it up, and like the ability to snap your fingers and have someone on site to fuel up a piece of equipment, that's hugely powerful, right? And the
Right.
customer experience, and if you can structure in a way that the renter is paying for it and you're marking it up, it seems like a great experience. And I'm actually thinking about Heave. Alex Kraft came on, I think it was episode 17 or something.
Okay. Yeah.
They do on demand service. It's a
Yeah.
similar sort of thing, right? So they have an
Yep.
app, and you equipment breaks down. Well, if you are a small rental company, you probably don't have 5 mechanics sitting around looking for stuff to do, right?
That's right.
But what you can do is click a button and have someone on site, and sort of like, in a sense, like it's like Uber
Yeah.
and what you guys are doing, it's almost like Uber for fuel, in a sense, right?
Uberification, yeah,
Yeah.
fuel. Yeah, and listen, I like I said, we've bootstrapped this to success. It hasn't been easy, but I think the scalability and the opportunity in the construction industry and rental, it can absolutely, and it should be an Uberification of fuel
Yeah.
management. Absolutely. I think but that's going to take some more money,
Right.
and scaling, obviously.
Yeah.
But I see it. I've been seeing this vision for years, and what I'm most excited about is I feel like we're kind of crested that mountain of no,
Yeah.
no, no, we don't know what you're talking about. To ooh, I'll take a meeting with you. This sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So
Well, on the bootstrapping side, I worked at Uber, so I know what it's like to burn billions of dollars a
yeah,
year, and how inefficient that is. But I think about,
yeah,
like, talk about these evolutions again. I think that second evolution has
yeah,
probably been going on for 40 years,
yeah, yeah,
and I think we're like now entering this 3.0 phase. And
yeah.
I think if you flash forward 10 years from now, this is the part I think that not everyone is totally on board with. But so this is something that I believe that not everyone believes, is like
Right.
the difference between a rental company in 2025 and 2035 won't be that it's 10 or 20% more efficient or more effective. It'll be 500%, because I think what's happening is the technology is changing so rapidly, and
Yes.
it's a step change. It's not a
Yeah.
linear thing.
No.
But for the last 10 years, it was linear, because you're still in this 2.0 phase.
Yeah.
You're going to 3.0. The companies that are going to win are going to be the ones that are fully connected systems,
Yeah.
using AI to predict things,
Yeah.
seeing around corners. It's going to be faster and more efficient than ever. Customer experience is going to be stronger than ever. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's happening in the next 10 years. And if we go to the ARA show next year and I see it, well, I think we'll move along that curve, but it won't be the step change. But I really think in 10 years, maybe 5 years, it's going to be revolutionarily different than where we are today.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think if you've been in the industry for 30, 40 years, you'd say, it's always been done this way. What do you know about things? Well, I don't know, but I know that, like, in other industries, when these changes happen,
Yeah.
like the internet, when that came on board, and social media and moving to the cloud, like, those are pretty transformational. I think what we're seeing now, it's that on steroids. And I think AI is going to be
Yeah.
a big part of that.
Well, listen, I'm one of the old guards, right? I remember, like I said, there was computers on every job trailer, big
Yeah.
clunky monster computer, and then it went down to your phone, and I see the evolution in front of me, and I'm super excited. And I'll give you a use case. There's a small, like 2 or 3 branch rental company here locally in LA area, and I've been around for 50, 75 years, and they just got onto Nomad, right? They're using Ally Fuels as their fuel management, and the branch manager, I set him up. I've known him for a long time. He's, he, like everybody, they kind of circle around and go to the big 5 and move around. But he called me out of the blue, and I got him set up. And in fact, his project manager, equipment manager, I gave her a login. I haven't even met her. And in 30 minutes, she figured out Nomad. And I got to get a testimonial. He's like, this is unbelievable. I mean, the amount of time, like you said, the amount of time I'm saving, and my customers happy. I'm getting invoices, and it's great. the one thing I got to say, and I used to say this early on in the pitches, is this thing works so well. Our software works so well that I actually lose touch with customers. I don't go to the
Mm.
offices as much and say hello because everything's just working. I don't need a, they're not sending me spreadsheets, an email, a text message. They just add jobs and I accept them and here we go. And when a job is off rent, they can kick off that alert as well. The communication in a lot of ways, because I like to be in front of people and talk. That's what I love to do most. But it's amazing how efficient this has already become. And like I said, the enhancements we have in our head in terms of, the strategy we have for growth, like you said, I 100% agree and validate that. That is exactly how it's going to, the roadmap for equipment rental is going to move so fast in the next 3 to 5 years.
So what would that look like for you? So like, let's just say you had a magic wand, you had, you weren't bootstrapping, you can build any product,
Yeah.
you can integrate with anyone, Quipli, whoever you want to integrate with. I'm mostly interested from the customer experience. Let's flash forward to 2030 or 2035. Yeah. And we've all sort of accepted that fuel is an important revenue driver for rental companies, but more importantly, it enhances the customer experience for the end renter. Like, what is like the end game? What's the magic experience look like?
I think, well, I mean, listen, rental's not only nationwide, it's global. And in fact, from what I've researched, Europe and Southeast Asia, they're probably a little better in terms of tech and focusing it more. I think they just had a lot more experience maybe. But my vision is, every branch in the country is using either my software or maybe a competitor's, who knows, that as a fuel provider, I don't want to step on their toes. So we actually built this where if there's relationships out there, let's say a local rental company already goes, hey, I love ABC Oil. Like, why can't I use them? You can't. I'm not going to step on anyone's relationships. We're just going to enhance it by the layer of technology. That's always been my pitch, the layer. I didn't know anything about software when I started, and I just love that logo, the layer of technology, because I think AI coming in, I just think it'll be effortless. I think we'll look back in 5 years saying, I can't believe we were so stuck for 8 years trying to get the ball moved forward. I think it's the inefficiencies. And like you said, integration is probably the next step, and that's going to take some time, right? There's so many softwares to connect to. And, even the oil companies that I know, the larger firms, the larger brokerage firms, they've got a stack of tech that it doesn't talk to each other. It needs to all be redone, in my opinion, right? So I see a lot of that happening now, and I think people, fear AI and they don't know what it means. But number one, you've got to have a basis for AI to use and utilize, right? And I think we do. So who knows where it's going to be, but in a perfect world, I think fuel management for rental will probably be one of the biggest topics in the next 3 to 5 years.
And you mentioned Europe and Asia. We've talked about on the podcast, rental penetration in the US is 60, 61% growing.
Yeah.
If you look at other parts of Europe and Asia, it's 80, 85%. So
that's right.
Ahead of us on that. Are they ahead on the fuel side as well?
Well, I'm digging into that right now. And like I said, bootstrapping this to where I'm at now, that's where I'm like, it's time for some strategic investors, partners or somebody, because I think there's a gold mine on that side of the hemisphere, or, the world as well. I think from what I've heard, they are just so much farther ahead. I just don't know where they're at with fuel. My guess is they're not very far, because rental companies just don't think about it. Now, they may have yard tanks. Rental companies they know yard, they have a yard storage for, to top off their equipment and their trucks to drive. That's been around for a long time. And there's some companies that are really good at helping them that. But the job site stuff, it's completely foreign to them. But we're perfecting it here locally. And all I can tell you is, the big five, we've got the data, like they know how efficient it has. And in terms of the money they're bringing in using our software, it's night and day compared to what, the evolution 1.0 is.
Yeah, right. And sorry, you mentioned the big five. One thing that another belief I have is like a lot of the innovation traditionally has been driven by the nationals who have big budgets to spend, right? They were the first groups in the rental industry to do e-commerce. They're the first ones to do customer portal. They're doing dynamic pricing. How are they thinking about fuel? Because in some sense, if you want to look at where the future is going, sort of watch where the nationals are investing.
Yeah.
How are they starting to think about fuel?
Well, I think for what my focus is, and that's job site fuel management, project per project, they are 100% interested. They are trying to. They know that fuel is a huge revenue opportunity. I think
Hmm.
they are now focused on it for sure. Like, yeah, I know for a fact they are definitely going down the rabbit hole on what to do and who they want to use or who do they want to, provide this service. And I think I have a pretty big case, right? There's not very many softwares that I know of that have been running 8 years and it works.
Yeah.
So they are 100% looking at it now. Now they've been looking at it for years, but I think finally the ball's getting moved forward now.
Yeah. Well, sometimes this is good though for the independents to potentially leap ahead on this,
That's
right?
right.
Because in our software, a lot of softwares, you can check the fuel levels before and after. It'll give
Yeah.
you an upcharge that exists, but being
Yeah.
able to offer it on site,
That's
just
right.
click of a button, that is such a superior experience. On top of the other things independents do well to really differentiate and make sure you have a healthy price point. You don't want to lower your price
That's
to
right.
compete, right? And this is one of several ways to offer superior customer service.
Yeah, and and the evolution of what Nomad does for these rental companies, we got a lot of there was a lot of barriers with the fuel providers. The jobbers like, well, because I started saying, hey, you guys, if you guys break down, like, this is how old school it can be. They can fill up 5 pieces of equipment, but they just want to write on their invoice a total aggregate of the gallons. They don't want to break down per unit. Well, the rental companies need that, right? And they want
Hmm.
the hour readings, especially for generators. Hour reading, that's how you build a customer. If you're doing a triple shift, it's really important to know, the hour reading. So that was a big hurdle for us. But what we realized is, as your ally, if you tell the customer, not me, because, I'm a different Greek city state, right?
Hmm.
But if the customer, or if the rental company tells the jobber, hey, if you do this, we're going to play ball with you. We like you. You're our local guy. We've known you for a long time. I think that's where we saw another evolution in terms of our history. And I
Hmm.
think in the next 3 to 5 years, I think now that we kind of got that figured out, where we're not, jobbers, my competitors or friends, they're now not looking at it as a threat of what I'm doing. I think that's a huge piece. And I think the next 3 to 5 years are going to be, I think it's going to be mind blowing. And I do think at these conventions, which I've never gone, I got to start going to some of these conventions and stuff. I think fuel's going to be number one on everyone's list the next year. I think 2025 and 2026, if you want to make more money as a small rental company or a large one, you got to go with fuel.
For sure. And, I don't know where the economy is going. It
Yeah,
may be tightening. And I think as part of that, you got to be thinking, how do you get an edge on customer
that's right.
service, but also another profit driver. And earlier you mentioned being stuck. One thing that we've started sense from rental companies, we're calling rental gridlock, which is where you're sort of stuck, right? Going from
Yes.
2.0 to 3.0. And there's 4 areas that people get stuck. It's siloed, remember the 16%
Yeah.
companies are fully connected. It's operational gridlock, having 1,000 things going on. It's visibility gridlock, not being able to
Uh-huh.
see and have access to your data, et cetera. And then the most important one is mindset gridlock, where you're
Yeah.
sort of like, hey, I can only grow to $2 million, or I can only go this way because it's always been done this way. And the episode before this, 52, we had on a guy. He's grown from 0 to $60 million of assets in 3 years in Texas,
Wow.
fully
Oh,
bootstrapped.
I
Like,
watched
just
that
got,
one. Yeah, I
yeah.
love that guy. Yeah, that was
And
great.
he's just like, but he has broken free from mindset gridlock, which is like,
Yeah.
it's always been done this way. So I'm not from the rental industry. You didn't grow up in the family business in the
No.
rental industry. And it's interesting having people who are newer. They go, why are we
Yeah.
doing it this way? Or like, why can't we
Right.
monetize fuel? Why shouldn't fuel be like one of the biggest revenue drivers for rental companies in the next 3 to 5 years,
Absolutely.
right? And it takes
Absolutely.
people outside the industry to think differently. Not on everything. 90% we should
Yeah.
learn best practices, but the 10%, that's where the innovation usually happens.
Yeah, and I look back and sometimes it's been frustrating over the years, as I implement this and keep it going, but now it's kind of the validation piece, the use case and the history where, oh no, Mike knows what he's talking about. Here's 8 years of it, and I think I do have a great reputation out there. I take this very seriously. I'm really proud of, even to this day, like I said, I have a local fuel delivery company here in LA, MC Fuels, and I still know every job that I have
Mm.
right now. Like, I know where my guys are right now, and I know what size generator they're filling, 120 kW, a 500, how much that one burns. Like, that's just my weird head. I can't remember. It's actually my wedding anniversary today. And I had a really good friend remind me this morning, which was smart. Don't tell my wife, but man, I can remember a generator that I filled that was gnarly up in a mountain, 5, 10 years ago,
Yeah. Well,
So,
congratulations. And if your wife listens to this, we'll edit this part out so she doesn't know that you forgot.
exactly.
We'll see if she gets this far into the episode. But,
exactly.
Mike, it's been awesome having you on, hearing your story. And I guess final question, which I like to ask people, best business advice you've ever gotten that's helped shape what you're building today at Ally Fuels?
Just listen. I think listening to the customer is absolutely 100% the most important piece. Don't get over your skis and your ego and thinking you know more. Listen to what the customers need and solve the problem. That's number one. Because if you do that, they're going to keep listening. They're going to keep calling you. That's absolutely my number one.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't say it better myself. We are customer obsessed as our company number one value. That was voted on by employees. And I think if you listen to the customer, do what's right, everything else takes care of itself, right?
Yeah.
So Mike, it's been awesome having you on. What's the best way to get in contact with you or learn more about Ally Fuels?
You know what? You can call me direct at 310-717-2924. My email address, mike.murphy@allyfuels.com. Like I said, we've got a little team behind us, but we got big dreams, and we're your ally for a reason. I think it's just the beginning. We're super excited about it. And Kyle, I love this platform. I think it's absolutely necessary. And I think 3 to 5 years from now, Kyle, we're going to be grinning, I hope, and going, man, remember when,
We're either going to be wrong if we're going to delete
the episode,
or we're going to say like, hey,
I know.
remember when we said there's big change coming in the industry? Like,
yeah.
I think if anything, we may underestimate it. That usually what happens in transformation.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
So it's an exciting time for both of us. Exciting time for rental companies to be in the space. Awesome episode, Mike. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks again.
Thanks, Kyle.